Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researchers Celebrities, powered by Empowering Science Foundation. Today we have Dr. Brandon Lyons with us as our researcher celebrity. A brief about Dr. Brandon. Dr. Brandon has done his bachelor's in science from Texas A&M in animal science with double major in entomology, and master's of science again from Texas A&M in entomology. For PhD, he went to Oklahoma State University and pursued his research in entomology. And currently, Dr. Brandon is assistant research scientist at Texas A&M. With this brief introduction, we will welcome Dr. Brandon to the show. Thank you. So, how we start this conversation is how and when you decided to become a researcher.
I think I started to become interested in becoming a researcher about halfway through my master's. I had my PI, Jeff Tarmelin, he kind of was responsible for shaping me to go through that transition from an undergraduate student into a graduate student conducting research. And through that transition, I became more interested in my future and what my opportunities were. And having watched him and the other professors in the department, I realized that that's probably a path that I would be interested in taking. So it's about that point that I started taking steps career-wise or with my education to go that path.
Mm-hmm. So from master's, when you might have different options to pursue academic research, industrial research, you chose to join a PhD program.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can tell us about the process, it does happens in United States.
So the transition, a lot of the time in the United States, you want to try to match your interests with a PI or primary investigator, but you also want to make sure that you'd be a good fit in their lab. So you got to understand the culture of their lab, the PI, how they are teaching students, how they teach their own graduate students, and so forth, and try to make decisions based on that. So I tried to go to professional meetings like the Entomology Society of America, or one that I actually met my PI for my PhD. It was called the Livestock Insect Workers Conference. So this conference is a group of academics, federal and state government workers, and industry persons, and then we all have a livestock or veterinary entomology focus. So as my master's, I was just started, and I realized that I wanted to continue with livestock entomology or veterinary entomology, because I enjoy working with animals and also enjoy field work, and I enjoy working with insects. So through LIWC, I met my PI and other PIs that would be potential good fits for me. And I talked with them about what their research programs are. I also went on their websites to see what research they have conducted and are currently conducting, if they had a lab website, or looking at Google Scholar or PubMed or whatever, to see what their citations are, to understand what their research focuses are, and if I would be interested in that as well.
Nice. So that being said, this is for all our audience who are interested in pursuing their PhD in United States. So as Dr. Brandon said, professional meetings are one of the key places where you have the opportunity to meet a person as your prospective PI. Then you can discuss your ideas with them. And before that, I always say this multiple times, that before going to a professional meeting, if you really want to interact with supervisors, for now let's say your prospective supervisors, in which lab you want to join, or you have some interest to discuss your ideas, always go online, check their PubMed page, see the current publications in the past, what they have worked on, and then how your interests match with the lab interest, because that is very important. These people already have scheduled their meetings so packed, because we go there only for network and do this. They go there on professional, kind of meetings with their colleagues interacting with them. So they have a very tight schedule, and if you really want them to spare some time for you, then you have to have that bait ready, that okay, I know this much of your lab, I know this work you are doing, and I'm interested in this, so can I have some time of yours so that you can discuss. So Dr. Brendan, which path did you take when you were interacting with your prospective PI?
Well, like I said, it was the Livestock Insect Workers Conference. So this conference is a little less formally structured than like ESA. They have a lot of meetings and it's blocked out and everything. They have meetings blocked out, but there's usually an ample time for networking afterwards, but they also set aside specific networking events to try to get that interaction with students or industry people and discuss projects and upcoming projects, collaborations, and so forth. Going into it, probably wasn't as prepared as if I were to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
My current boss, he likes to call them elevator speeches. So
Mm-hmm.
you get a 3-minute gap when you're writing from the first floor to, say, the 4th floor. So it's good to have a short and sweet talk about what you're doing, what you're interested in doing, in this case, what you want to be doing in their lab. So you can introduce yourself and also have them give them an idea of what you want to do, but in a very short amount of time. Like you said, these PIs are going to these meetings. They often have other meetings associated. So my boss has official meetings with other department heads. Other meetings go on within these larger meetings, and they're very, very tight on time. But oftentimes you can get at least 3 minutes while they're getting coffee at the coffee station or something. So I think if I were to approach it again, I would have a better developed 3-minute talk. I just thought your audience would appreciate that little nugget of don't do as I do kind of thing, learn from my mistakes. But like the LIWC was pretty open, and it was easy to talk with my PI. I wanted to get a PI that was a little more laid back, easy to talk with, and we were able to talk and figure out what he's doing and what he's interested in doing and what upcoming projects, grants, and so forth he has. And so it worked out. But
so when you were having this first conversation with him and you never met the person before, you have read about it, and now the interaction goes, because often it's said that PhD is like entering into a marriage. Okay, so you might or might know the person, but so let's start from the first step. When you met the PI for the first time, you were sure that you want to join that lab in the first meeting?
I knew that he would be a good potential fit just based on his character and how we interacted. I had a couple other potential persons that I talked to, and I ended up applying to theirs as well, their labs as well. I didn't get a chance to discuss his current students, and I didn't get a chance to talk to his current students to see how he is as a PI in that regard. Again, another thing that I think it would be a good idea if, like you said, it's entering a marriage, it's a 4 or 5 year commitment, and there's going to be a lot of stress involved between you and them and with others. They often will help form your committee. Some PIs will tell you who to choose, and some will give you a little more flexibility on potential committee members, and you choose from that list, that sort of thing. So it's important to understand the culture of the lab. My PI had only a master's student, I believe, at the time, and I didn't talk to that person beforehand. But I got a good enough feel just through our conversations that I think I'll do well in his lab. I think I can make it work, and it ended up being no problems. He and I were great, worked well together.
So now let's talk about the journey of the PhD itself. Everyone knows that no PhD is piece of cake. It is full of all the roller coaster rides. A lot of stress involved.
Yes.
So how was your journey of PhD, and then how you managed to stay your head on top of the stress?
So my PhD program was had two parts basically. So I had a couple years, and early on you have a high course load compared to later on. I'm trying to get your core classes and some of your electives that you need to get a background so you can help conduct your research. So the first couple years was that, and my project was focused more on bacteria and a disease called kinky back with chickens, and we're trying to see if beetle, the lesser mealworm, would be a reservoir. So my focus was on that. But in the middle I had to take a couple year gap for medical reasons. By the time I returned, and it took a long time going through the application process, I had to reapply and so forth, and had to wait for my PI to get another grant to fund me to come back. But that grant that when I came back on was different, so my project completely changed. And that's probably going to be unusual for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will have multiple different sub-projects or chapters in your dissertation, but this one was more very, very different. When I returned, it was more of a insecticide resistance type work. It's also thought to be part of it, and then originally, but it just had to change, and I had to go from a research assistant to, or not like a teaching assistant when I came back, to help fund my studies when I came back. So it's a lot different in that regard compared to others. My PI, this is where it's important that you choose your PI. My PI was very supportive, never judged me for having to leave. He understood that I had to leave for those couple years to get better, and then help support me when I returned to make sure I can get up and going and continue on and complete my PhD. So it took a little longer too. I think it was about 3 years when I returned, and plus a couple years, so it's about 5 or so years, I believe. So it was different in that regard, but it worked out in the end.
Yeah, that is the most important part.
Yeah.
So this is for all the audience there, that as Dr. Brendan just mentioned, that there can be any challenges, be it financial, be it physical, be it medical, or be it personal. You should have a repute with your PI where you can go and talk to them without any filter. Whatever it is, they should know. The more transparent you are, the better relation you develop, and it helps you in a longer way. So if you are trying to hide a couple of things and want to come up with makeup ideas, the lie, as we say in India, that sometimes has to burst the bubble. You cannot pull that bubble for a long time. So what we always believe in, if you can have this repute with your PI where you can be more transparent, where you can be vocal about your problems in the lab, either it is lab environment or the limitations, either it is infrastructure or equipment or timings per se, because what we see in India a lot of time, that some of the PI want their students, especially the PhD students or postdocs, work post 5 p.m., 6 p.m. or even late in nights. Once in a while, we always say that it is understandable if you are doing in chemistry or biology, because you might have set the reactions where you have to be there for kinetic studies. But that is not true for all of the other fields, and even for them, there should be a acceptable, which is, I always say, mutual acceptance, where you are also ready to give that extra time to it, because at the end of the day, we all are human beings, and we do need to be happy and at peace with our own self, as well as keeping the priorities and the responsibilities which we have from our family part. So now we'll come to another topic about changing the topics within the PhD. So this is something which we have seen this recently coming up more and more, because either the projects are not working the way they were supposed to, or because of the funding, as you mentioned in here, because now on certain kind of funding you cannot pursue certain other research, so you have to change or add the topics into there. So how challenging is this doing midway of the PhD, and B, then what are the positive outcomes of that?
I also had that challenge. I had a committee member when I was getting my master's tell me that science rarely works as planned, and that has never failed me, that concept.
Mhm.
You can plan, you can guess how the experiment's going to go, but sometimes just fate has its way with you, and it's completely different than you expect.
Mhm.
But what you do with that is important. In my case, we were trying to get an interaction study between a couple different compounds working, and it just wasn't working. So I worked with my advisor, and we found a way to kind of answer the question, but in a different way. So it was a mortality type study where we're looking for deaths of beetles, but we were having issues with them not dying or just unexpected results. So another way to look at it is, okay, they're surviving. So what are the implications of them surviving? So from that, I was able to do a large kind of chapter, I guess you would say, looking at sublethal effects rather than lethal effects of these interactions. And to this day, it still fascinates me, and I want to continue down that path. I'm looking to hopefully do some more work in that field here soon with the lesser mealworm, and also looking at other insects, because I think it's an underappreciated or understudied topic. Resistance is such an issue, but we don't really look at what happens to these insects
Exactly.
after we spray for them, and then how does that affect the populations? Are we having a pest resurgence from spraying? Maybe it's better that we don't spray here.
Yes.
Yeah, but we don't know unless we look at it. So.
No, this is a brilliant idea, and I think this is something again which I'll always tell to all the researchers, especially the PhD students, that when you are performing your experiments and the results are a little bit not opposite but in a different way, they probably can be tangential to your hypothesis, then as Dr. Brandon just mentioned, the most important part comes here, that how and what you do with that result. If you dissect it more, there has to be a science, and this is the beauty of biology, which obviously is most of the time the challenge also, because they are not behaving the way you expected. So now comes the real research question, that why they are not behaving this way. If you are giving poison to some living thing, they should die. That's why we call that as poison in partly. And if they are not, then what are the implications of it, as you clearly studied also, and now it fascinates you even more. And I share that same feeling whenever it is about the unexpected results. But PhD is, in most of the cases, it is a duration limited thing, that you are supposed to achieve your degree in that time. And when these experiments going northwest, and then this builds up a stress on PhD students. And here in United States, back in India, what we have seen is students are dropping out of PhD after many number of years. It can be 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what student we are talking about. But you might have had these thoughts at some point of time, that do you really want to do this? Or you might have seen friends dropping out of PhD. So what are the experiences or the lessons learned you can share with the audience, that what they should do when the situation like this comes?
Managing stress is an important part of it, for sure. There's multiple chapters, you're doing multiple, sometimes they're more different than you think. Research topics, they might still be in the same insects, organism, but you might be looking at biology, you might be doing resistance on one part of it, so there's multiple components you're trying to manage. If you're still taking classes, hopefully not towards the end, when you're trying to really crank down on getting your dissertation written. I think it's a lot of it, you need to have good time management that will help alleviate not waiting till the last minute to write your chapters, and you can at least get the introduction done and your protocols, having a good lab manual so you can remember things that you did as you're going through what worked, what didn't work, and why it might have not worked. So you can troubleshoot in case something's not working right. You can maybe recover from it or look at a different aspect of the question and maybe get different answers, so you can put together a chapter. Keep good communication with your PI and your committee members. They're there to help you. A good PI will be supportive, keep you on track, support you both personally and academically. In case you have issues with your other committee members, I've had people have issues with committee members, and understanding who to go to if you're having issues with a committee member that's maybe not signing off on your chapter. I had someone that I knew went through that issue. I just guided them on who to talk to help resolve that problem. Tell them the department head here is really here to help you navigate these issues, and talk with your PI and kind of be the middle person. So I think what they actually had to do was go to the department head and get a discussion with everybody so they can resolve the issue so he can go forth and graduate. I know people that have had PIs that weren't a good fit for them, and then they had to drop out, but sometimes you can switch PIs.
Yes.
If you work better with somebody else in the department or in the university, and they can make your project work with their lab, then I'm all for people trying to find a good fit for them. Mentally, mental health is very important. You have to have a good balance, work-life balance, as I say. Occasional, like you said before, occasional night work and checking samples late at night, that's expected. Science, sometimes we have to do time points that just aren't 9 to 5 hours, but a PI that makes you do that consistently, having 10 hours, 6 days a week, that's not a good work-life balance.
Absolutely.
So that's part of why I suggest that people kind of talk with grad students in that person's lab before they join that lab, so they get an idea what the lab culture is, see if it'll be a good fit. For some people, they enjoy that type of environment, and if that works for them, that's great.
Exactly. This is about the perfection of the mutual consent of the two people. Like,
Exactly.
if you want to work 12 hours every day, 7 days in a week, and if the PI is something who don't want you to be in lab pre-9 or post-5, then obviously that lab is not a perfect fit for the student, and vice versa. If you want, you have decided that you want to do your research very structured way and only from 9 to 5 strictly, and if the PI had other expectations, so obviously this relationship is not going to work for long. So it is very important to do talk about that in initial stages, if possible, before registering for the PhD. And if not, then the situation might come like when you have to take a break from it. A option, as Dr. Brandon said, if there is an option, you can change the PI, that will be the best. But if not, then I always suggest that mental health is the first most important thing for any researcher or in humans in general. Even if you are not a researcher, stress is not something which is limited to researchers. If you are not in research, you probably are doing something else and might be more stressed. So the research is not which brings stress to you, it is your own performance or expectations from you which brings this stress. Speaking of which, here in United States, I know many of the universities give the counseling sessions or therapies or mediations if there is a conflict between a PI and the student.
Mm-hmm.
According to your own experience, like before PhD, during PhD, and after PhD, how will you grade in the system in general that it is all there what the help is required or more is required?
I never looked into what my individual universities had for counseling services. I knew A&M had they have counseling services, and I think there's probably more systems in place now than when I was an undergrad or master's student. We have tell somebody reports. So if somebody's having issues, students can report anonymously or put their name down so they can be contacted, so they can get a more detailed report of what's going on. But professors or staff members can also do these reports if they're noticing somebody's suffering mentally, physically, however, and then the university will follow up, which I think is an excellent resource that not everyone's aware of. As a staff member here at Texas A&M, we have free counseling sessions. I think it's 5 a year, and then we also have paid time leave, and then they have a lot of these wellness benefits, so they try to get you in like a massage chair or just these little things. They encourage you to do exercises, all these different things that are part of our benefits package that I think is very, very nice. I see some of the staff members taking advantage of them, and some so I try to make people aware of them, that if they're joining our lab, that hey, these benefits are here for you. I encourage you to look into them if you need them. Read through the benefits booklet. So I think it's improving, but it's going to be institution dependent. I'm sure there's schools that do a better job of it and some that don't.
I agree. So this is for the students who want to go to a grad school or are already part of it. This is a very great advice from Dr. Brandon, that reading those package and benefit booklets, which I believe at least 98 to 99% of us never go through, because these can be very important in your journey at any institution. And I know some of my friends which actually go and read every single sentence of that entire booklet, which is obviously good, and that's why if I have to talk to, I just go and get my piece of information from them. So if you have your friends like that, it is good. If not, then please do take your time, read those things, because it might feel that you have to read a lot, but if you are going to grad school, you anyways have to do that a lot. And this might be a good change for you, because you are not reading the research articles of your subject. So, and this, in the second way, because it will make your life easy in so many ways, either enjoying the benefits which you are not aware of, or you already are paying for it somewhere else just because you don't have the information that it is covered in some of your benefits. Now let's come to the post-PhD part. Some people say that PhD changes you for rest of your life. Do you agree with that?
I think the journey to getting a PhD proves to yourself more so, but most importantly, and then to others, that you're able to focus on a topic and become a subject matter expert. You're able to manage projects. You're able to write and hopefully be able to give a presentation, so you have good written and oral skills. So all these different skills that you learn, the other skills, like if you're in a molecular lab, PCR and all that. So there's a lot of hard skills that you'll learn going through the PhD journey that will help you in your post-PhD career. But you also get a lot of the soft skills, the project management, the communication, the time management, some of these soft skills that just are important in no matter what field. So we're entomologists, but there's still the same skills that we'll need to do if we're to become engineers or teachers or whatever. So I think the journey and the skills that you learn along the way will definitely be a benefit to you, and no matter what you decide to do, these skills just transfer to a lot of different fields, and so in that regard, I think it does change you, and it also gives you confidence that you're able to persevere through mental and other challenges that come along the way as well. Sometimes when life gets in the way, we have these stressful things that we're still able to juggle that and continue on and get through it. So yeah, I think it does change you.
Yeah, and this is something which I always say as a joke, that whosoever has passed PhD, they are the survivors in themselves, because some people were not able to, clear it. So on a serious note, when we do talk about PhDs and the challenges which it trains you for, but still sometimes for early faculty, like when it is getting to a faculty position, the challenges for it, like getting the grant, writing the paper, getting the grant, writing the paper, and then they end up in this vicious cycle. And some of them, like I can say most of them, do enjoy their research, but some of them, when I meet personally with the professors, I feel they are so stressed about it that they are in a situation where they just cannot give up on the research, as well as they are not enjoying it as much as they used to. So when you are already walking that path now, what are your suggestions for the current postdocs or recently joined, faculties, that how they can carve their path out of this situation?
That's a tough one. So luckily, my position, my boss kind of crafted the position to be kind of like if I were a PI without the administrative stuff that goes along with it. So I manage a lab and I try to write grants and get funded, and I have some say on what projects I can pick up, a little side project like the one I was talking about earlier, if I can. So this has helped me understand what it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best way for me to understand how it, being a PI would be like. And not a lot of people have that opportunity, and I'm thankful for my boss for giving it to me. I can see why there'd be stress. There's a lot of publish or perish, I guess you would call it. You need the currency of our job is how many papers we publish each year, and there's a lot of stress involved in working with others. Data collection takes a long time. Then putting together the manuscript and submitting it, and then especially lately it takes a long time for these manuscripts to get through the system, to get revised. If you get rejection, you got to go find another journal. You got to reformat and submit there. So there's a lot of stress with that. I think PIs just spend a lot of time just having to go through emails and doing some administrative tasks, and they probably don't get to do a lot of the bench work that they might have enjoyed as their postdoc or their PhD. So that's probably some of their stress, is that they're doing stuff that it's not what they really got into it for, but is necessary to get their lab funded and go forth. The funding probably drives a lot of your projects. Maybe, especially early on, you got to go where the money is. I think that's part of it. It might not be what you really want to do, but you got to get the money for the lab, and then eventually, when you're a little more, your lab's more set up, then maybe you can start to go into these other projects that interest you more. And it's, yeah.
No, and this is something which I always tell to all the PhD students, that if you really want to become a PI and you have this clear mind that this is what you are supposed to do in rest of your life, or at least in future, I always say that getting training in PhD is the best time, because there you are involved in almost everything, from ordering to either you are ordering the chemicals or the instruments. So the specifications, because when you become a PI, there is no one who's going to do this for you unless you have a great lab manager who's well trained in that. So if not, then you have to know all those specifications, the competitive price if the same chemical is provided by company X and company Y, and you have budgets which is limited, at least when you are starting. So all these small things, getting trained while during PhD is the best thing which you can do, and you can learn. Because anyways, data collection, writing the manuscript, this is what you are learning as part of it. But if you are interested, you can always be part of other things, like not only about ordering the chemicals or instruments, but about the troubleshooting also, because every now and then instruments breaks. Okay, you should know that how much the time it will take if instrument A gets out of the service, or instrument B. For some you might have just 1 day timeline to get fixed, or for some you might have to have a month. So are you prepared for those? Because I know a couple of friends who struggle with this part just because they were never got trained about this unexpected, breakdowns in the lab, and this happens so much of it.
Mhm.
The way we say that experiment goes the way you don't want them to, the same goes for the lab operations also. You never expect new instruments to go bad in couple of days, months, or years. Okay, so getting training in these is also very important.
Mhm.
Now I will ask you the question which we always keep for the for the last part of the conversation. What is this one thing which keeps you going after all the failed experiments, after all the challenges, after all the stress?
What keeps me going is it's important to have a job that you enjoy going to every day. So what keeps me going is knowing that when I come in, I enjoy what I'm doing. The day might go bad, equipment breaks, or whatever, but as a whole, I enjoy working with the insects and the animals and whatever projects that we have going on. I enjoy working with technicians and the postdocs and my boss, the PI. So it's important to whatever situation, whether you're in academia or in industry or in government, is you enjoy your work and you enjoy those around you to make it an environment that you want to continue on. So that's a large part of what keeps me going. I enjoy what I do. Also, I try to take as many opportunities as I can to, knowing that I have a goal in mind, so I take as many opportunities that my current position allows me to try to achieve that goal. The ultimate goal of working for the federal government or whatever that is, what skills do I need, hard skills or soft skills? So I try to take advantage of those, and that helps keep me going. The end goal keeps me going, where I want to be for the next 20, 30 years, whatever it is there. To get there, I need to do this. So
Nice.
I keep that in mind and kind of plan forward. So I keep going.
Absolutely, and I think this is what I always say, that do whatever makes you happy, because then that only makes sure that you love your job and you love what you do. That's when this thing comes. Like I have had researcher celebrities when they say that they don't feel a work-life balance, because they say that what they love is what they are living and what they are doing.
Mhm.
So they always see this as a one package, that even when they are not in the laboratory actively or on a walk or on a hike, they are still thinking about the projects, and sometimes the best ideas comes out of the lab,
Yeah.
which again goes back in here. So they say we don't even see the work-life balance because we are actively doing what we are loving. So
Sure.
they don't keep those boundaries in. Whereas some of them are so particular about it that, okay, they say that when they are not in lab, 90% of the time they are not working, which obviously it is about your personality. So you have to think about only one thing, that if research gives you happiness, this is for you. Stress is unavoidable no matter wherever you go. So if you are running away from research because of stress, I don't think that is a valid point. But again, it is the individualistic thing, and if you think it is not for you, it is not for you. One thing which I can say for sure, that if research gives you happiness, a little bit of stress obviously,
Mhm.
until unless it is not chronic, I believe that every researcher in the world is a celebrity, and that is part of the entire series, how we celebrate research at this series, and why we call all of our conversation as researcher celebrities, because at this series we say let's celebrate research. So if I may ask now, do you consider yourself as a researcher celebrity?
I try to be anyway, but yeah, I think it's an important research or whatever field you are. It just helps everyone around you, and so
Yes.
in that way, it's contributing to society in a positive way. So yeah, I would say I'm a part of that So I would guess I would be a celebrity.
Absolutely. Thank you. And from now, I will say to all the audience, if you want to ask question to Dr. Brandon, you can write email to him. And if you want Empowering Science Foundation or STEM for Society to put you in touch with our researcher celebrities, please feel free to write it to us. And then stay tuned for more of the researcher celebrity conversations. With this, thank you very much, Dr. Brandon.
Thank you, Dr. Roger, for speaking with me.